everyone. Design isn't just about how a space looks. It's about how it makes us feel, think, and function. Every environment we step into shapes our emotion, focus, and even memory. In this Mindscapes series, we explore how design goes beyond decoration to improve our lives. I'm Professor Nadim Adi from Interior Design at Texas State University, and throughout this series, we'll speak with designers, artists, psychologists, and researchers to better understand how the spaces around us shape our mental well-being. For individuals living with dementia, the world can feel unfamiliar and overwhelming. But design can improve that by providing comfort, familiarity, and security. From memory cues to sensory-friendly spaces, thoughtful environments can help maintain independence and dignity. In this episode, we're exploring how thoughtful design can help individuals living with dementia feel more secure, independent, and connected to their environment. Our first guest is Dr. Mais El-Junaidi, Assistant Professor of Instruction in the Department of Psychology at Texas State University, who I think is the best person to talk about this. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me here today.
So when we think about dementia, we think about someone gradually losing their memory. How does that affect the way we can interact with our environment?
So dementia in many cases is usually associated with decline in cognitive abilities as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this will make the person need longer time to perform daily tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the person also will lose interest in activities they used to do as well.
Oh, okay. And so they're taking longer to do certain tasks. So I suppose that can become an issue for them down the line from, say, a safety point of view?
Yes, it's not only safety, but also the feeling of independence, which can be very frustrating in people with dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So interior design should come to help them, as you mentioned, stay safe and be more independent as well.
So how can we make a space that is more accessible for a person who's dealing with that?
Yeah, so fortunately we have a lot of studies about interior design and dementia. We have massive amount of studies about this subject, and many countries, they have building code for dementia, which we don't really see in other things like, for example, depression and anxiety and all this stuff. But in dementia, there are many studies about this aspect. And this involves many aspects in design. For example, the carpet. Let us talk about the carpet on the floor. If it is black, then many people with dementia, they will think it's a hole on the ground.
Oh, okay.
And they try to avoid it, which can be confusing. Sometimes there is no way to go around it. So the color of the carpet matters. Instead of using black carpet, we need to use, for example, color red, which they can immediately spot as a carpet, not a hole on the floor.
So the black kind of flooring in the studio might not be the best place for someone with dementia.
Exactly, and flooring in general as well, if it is shiny, it might be perceived as there is water on the floor. And we need to avoid this as well, which might be confusing or unpleasant. Now, if it's better always to have an option, like if there are stairs, then you need to give another options, for example, elevators. If we can't do that, it's only stairs, then we should make sure that there is a handrail for them to hold on. The height of every step matters. It shouldn't exceed a certain limit. It's just above 6 inches. Otherwise, it becomes harder to climb these stairs and can increase the chance of falling down, for example. So
no kind of castle-sized historic stairs that go like 12 inches or so.
If the person is in a health center, for example, there should be clear signage on the walls, and shouldn't be very high or very low as well. The signage should be easily to spot within your eyesight. The colors of the signage should stand out. It should be completely different than the color of the wall. Even the font the color of the font on it should be different than the background.
Oh,
and
right.
we can use
Okay.
images as well beside everything. Like if there is a washroom, we can draw a certain image or certain signs to make it easier to navigate.
And are these recommendations just for someone valid for a person who's dealing with dementia, or is it a combination? Because dementia is usually associated with old age, correct?
Similar design code applies also to support older people. So it's very, very similar design code.
Okay. And I guess one of the things we hear, people talking about when they have to kind of leave their home and live in a home care environment, is that they're not familiar with that environment. And you're mentioning with dementia, they also tend to lose familiarity in their own home. So how can we kind of maybe counteract something like that?
There is something called memory box, which is used widely in healthcare centers. So memory box is usually a large box. It's usually wooden, and there is a glass on the front. Inside the memory box, we can put things that relate to the person. Who is using the space. For example, photos of their children, photos of their childhood, things relate to their hobbies. If they like knitting, for example, we can put things that they did knit, for example. All of these can trigger, hopefully, pleasant memories and can make them feel belonged to the area they are in.
Okay. And with these memory boxes, should we be placing them within their room or like in the living? Like where would be a good place to kind of strategically place them?
If it is a health center, then they are usually placed on the in the corridors, because inside their rooms you can just put directly things on the walls without the need of the memory box.
So near the entrance of their rooms.
Exactly, or inside their room as well. For the memory box, it's near the entrance of their room. But if it is inside the room or inside their house, then there is no need for the memory box. We can put things directly on the walls.
So it doubles up almost as a reminder, kind of.
Yes, reminder of different stages of their lives, reminder of things they love, hobbies they have, and so on.
So we're talking about people who are living with dementia, but what about the family members or the healthcare professionals who are helping care for those people? What kind of design, I wouldn't say intervention, but suggestions we can give them?
We need to help them making things easier. The first thing is the safety of their beloved person. Or the person they are taking care of. Safety comes number one. So removing anything that can cause tripping, for example, should be taken in consideration. Removing any clutter or things the person doesn't use that much. Some older people, they say, we don't want to remove our stuff. We want to keep it, because if we move it aside in a box or a drawer, we're not going to use it. This is okay, but as long as we are making it safe for them to move from a place to another place, make it safe and convenient to move. At this point, then it's okay to have a lot of things around, as long as you are making sure that it's safe for them to walk and they don't trip with this stuff and so on.
So it's kind of a balance between what a person wants and the safety aspect.
Yes.
And you mentioned tripping, and when it comes to tripping, the old people in my life that I visited, my mom, my dad, for instance, they have a love of carpets. So you'd see rugs and area rugs everywhere. How can we make these kind of safer in terms of tripping hazards?
Now the edges of the carpet is what matters the most. Make sure the edges are with complete contact with the floor. And there are some certain things you can add. If you want very simple and cheap thing, you can just add some tape on the edges. So it becomes completely flat and reduces significantly the chance of tripping. And tripping is not only about the carpets and things on the floor. Sometimes you want them to have better balance. So even the furniture, for example, a chair should have an arm. So it's easier, you can use this arm to sit, and then it helps you to stand up again. The stairs, always it should be handrail for the stairs. And this handrail should have a color that is different than the color of the wall. So it's very easy to spot. Sometimes people label the steps as well, the edges of the steps. In health centers for older people, they usually label the first and the last step. But in someone's house, they could benefit a lot from labeling, like use a tape as well. It's very cheap and easy to use, to label the edge of each step, which make it easier to spot and use.
Okay, well that's fantastic. I think a lot of small things we could kind of use, so thank you for that. I love all of these suggestions, so I'll probably end up buying tape and kind of going like, this is the way to kind of make the house better. Well, thank you, Dr. Mace. In our next segment, we'll be joined by Caroline Hill, Associate Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Our second guest is Caroline Hill, Associate Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University, who brings her expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So when we're looking at dementia, we're always thinking about memory loss. And how do you think that affects how people kind of deal with their environments?
So many ways. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges, I think, for helping people with dementia navigate their spaces safely is really understanding simply that circulation need, right? Because you can forget common paths that you took every day to a specific part in your place in your home.
That's true, yeah.
Or place in a living facility, wherever you may be. So the more clear and direct we can organize space to support easy navigation, along with graphics and signage and wayfinding, the more we can support them in that way.
Okay. And you mentioned graphics and signage, and how do we kind of, because when we think about dementia, we're always associating it with advanced age. So how do we kind of approach those graphics? I mean, I'm wearing glasses now. Lord knows how heavy they'll become later on. But
Well, we need to acknowledge the aging eye, right? So you need font sizes that are large enough that they're readable, or graphics and symbols that are universally or easily understood. And we need high contrast, right?
Got it.
We need to really distinguish the foreground from the background.
Okay. And when we are called upon to design a dementia-friendly space, what's our usual role, apart from making it functional and cool, I guess? What kind of considerations do we kind of look at when we're looking for a dementia space?
Not my area of expertise, to be upfront, but I do know from what little I have done in that area that creating a sense of home, making a scale, creating a space that feels comparable to a home environment in terms of scale, rather than large, overwhelming, hospital-like scales, is very important. And then obviously managing or designing an environment that protects them as much as possible, right?
That's
so
true,
making sure there aren't unnecessary hazards in the environment that can potentially put them in danger.
Fair enough. I think, everyone has had the horrible experience of stepping on a Lego.
Oh,
right?
Yes, so painful.
So we don't want that. We don't want anything close to, we don't want even anything bigger to trip someone. Or
But rugs, right? So rugs are something that we tend to think, well, that makes a space feel cozy and home-like.
That's true,
But it can also be a tripping hazard.
Right? That's true.
So I know one of the recommendations for caring for someone with dementia in your home is to really remove small rugs, make sure that cords are out of the way.
Got it.
Don't move furniture around unnecessarily.
Fair enough, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
keep things as consistent as possible.
Yeah.
So striking that balance between things that make maybe not a more institutional dementia setting still feel like home but be safe.
Fair enough.
Is a real balancing act.
Yeah, and I think part of it is we want them to be safe because they're already dealing with so much. We don't want to give them like the added bonus of an injury or something. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned familiarity in a space, and apart from copying their own home, how do we kind of have a more nuanced approach to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of it is the scale of the space, right? Making sure that the scale of the spaces that they occupy in a non-residential setting are still comfortable and feel safe, going back to that idea of safety, right? I think the degree to which we can let them personalize that space.
Oh, yeah.
Right, bringing in photographs or graphics. I did work on one senior living project. It wasn't exclusively dementia care, but that was a small component. Everybody got to choose a black and white image to put by their door. And many of the residents chose iconic movie stars like Clark Gable right?
Cool.
And so that part of their memory was still intact, and that became a great wayfinding tool that they each got to personalize.
That's so true, because it's I think one of the things when you look at a hospital, for instance, or a health care building, is that you get the same door repeated like 100 times.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
Which can be hard for someone with dementia, because then which door is mine?
Yeah, well, let alone anyone else. Like I get lost all the time.
Right. Yes, let's be fair. It's hard for all of us.
Right. Yeah. But I love the idea of having your personalized sign.
Right. So you always know.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Clark Gable.
Yeah. I'm wondering. I look at the newer generations and the generation of my kids or my young relatives, for instance, and I think, well, what type of signage would we get?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
What would my daughter put up there? I have no idea.
For a while, I thought maybe Justin Bieber or something like that.
Right, Kendrick Lamar. I mean, who knows? It changes from month to month.
Yeah. And I'm thinking as well is with technology, because we're always kind of incorporating technology into our own designs. So, what do you think? This is just us dreaming, I guess, here. But what do you think? 50 years into the future, what type of technology will we be working with?
Oh, that's wonderful to imagine. I haven't indulged in that thinking, but I mean, just right off the cuff, I'm thinking maybe instead of static images outside that door, do we have little digital screens that rotate through a series of familiar images? I mean, is there even a component where we could attach sound or smell to those kinds of things as cues?
That's true,
Right, when our brain is failing us on the more logical memory piece, how can we tap into those other senses through maybe some technologies that don't exist? That's fun to think about.
It is. It's always fun. I think science fiction is always kind of throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks.
I mean, I would like to have the scent of chocolate chip cookies greeting me at the door.
That's a good
scent. I would go in. It would call to me.
They do that in bakery shops, right?
Right. And don't they have certain scents also in casinos?
Oh, yeah.
To try to get us to stay and spend more money.
That's true. That's true. I think, but part of some of the designs is that they purposefully remove all windows so you don't get a sense of time.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. I think that's really fun and interesting to kind of think about. I would kind of think, well, in some cases you don't want to have the doors visible when we're designing a dementia care center, for instance.
From a security perspective?
Yeah, because like they want to open the door and wander outside. And
right.
And I'm guessing in the weather we've got here, that might not be a huge issue, but in places where it's extremely cold or so,
right,
that can be an issue.
Yeah, so you're speaking more of primary means of egress from a space, not necessarily the private door.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And then how do you manage that? I mean, ideally they're not readily visible, but if they are readily visible and you have to have a lot of security on them, how do you do that in a graceful way?
Yeah,
that says you're not a prisoner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think another thing is with all these interventions, we want to make sure that the client in our case, or the user in our case, is feels comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
And safe.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think, you just made me think about the passage of time and daylight, right?
Yeah.
That can be really important, but also a challenge, right? Isn't there
That's true,
the sundowner syndrome where sometimes early evening can be a very upsetting time for people with dementia?
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So I don't know what the research currently says about how to navigate or help them through that.
Yeah. And my mind immediately goes to places where you get the 15-hour long days, or
in
vice
the
versa.
northern climates. Yeah, how do you manage that?
Yeah, because that's challenging for anyone, let alone someone living with dementia.
Yeah, because you wanna honor that natural circadian rhythm of the human body and the regularity of that. But knowing if there's a particular time of day that's challenging for that population, do you manage it through certain window coverings that come down automatically at a certain time of day to mitigate some of that potential?
I think another part of the challenge is that getting to talk with the medical side of things and figuring because we cover a lot of anatomy between the two of us, but I think talking to someone who their main kind of job is studying that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we cannot work in a silo. We
true.
need to be educated and really partner with the primary caregivers and the experts in that diagnosis.
Oh, okay. So it kind of goes back to, talk to the shareholders in a sense.
Absolutely, right. And there are many.
That's true, that's true. And I guess another shareholder that we don't mention a lot is the family of the person too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, who wants to be assured that their beloved is safe and respected and well cared for.
Yeah. Well, I think on a more hopeful note, I think with the current advancement of technology, we might kind of figure out a way to kind of mitigate a lot of that.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's interesting. I think of my own parents. Like they're not of the generation that would probably be super receptive to a lot of technology.
Yeah.
But I think our children.
That's true.
Are going to be, and hopefully us.
Yeah. That's true. No,
those of us in the middle, we're going to be ready for that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, that's awesome talk, Caroline. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah. In our next segment, we'll be joined by Crystal Marine, interior design student at Texas State University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guest is Crystal Marine, an interior design student at Texas State University, who brings her perspective to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Whenever we talk about dementia and memory loss, we often think of an elderly person and they're forgetting things. Yeah. So how do you think it affects the way they interact with their environment?
I mean, I think it's a huge factor in how they interact with their environment, especially if they do have an episode where they don't know where they are. And I think it's a huge factor in that.
Yeah. I think I guess it's always difficult to design for something that, regular behavior is difficult enough to design for, let alone that behavior that changes sometimes quite drastically.
Absolutely.
In a short period of time, right?
Right, where you're also trying to keep them safe.
Fair enough, fair enough. you mentioned keeping people safe and having safe spaces that are also accessible for that population. How do you think designers can approach that, or what would the role of us as designers be?
Honestly, just making it a safe space for them, as comfortable as possible. So when you're talking about just simple wayfinding, very obvious circulation in a space, you know, so you want them to be able to go straight to their bed or straight to that chair or straight to that desk without really any barriers. It's important to design with color that maybe they're familiar with.
All right.
And definitely, again, using that nature, bringing nature inside. I think it's really important for them as well.
Okay. I think you bring up a really beautiful point of familiarity, because that's often something we hear again and again in terms of dementia homes or dementia-assisted living places. How do we go about, how do you think we can go about creating a familiar space? Because we want to put our stamp as designers, right, on things, but at the same time we want it to be familiar to the person. So how do you kind of balance these things?
I mean, you can balance it through easily color. I think I think you can figure that out quite. I mean, you would want to quite easily on what things bring them comfort, maybe by asking family members, things like that, or looking at the things that they're trying to bring with them, and kind of, you know, obviously it's important. So again, it's just really important to get to know that user and what their needs are and how they're going to age that way. So you know, make it easy.
I think you bring in the key point of knowing the user, right? So that's I guess a lot of your professors have, I guess, told you at certain points. My professors included is research the client and understand your client.
Yes,
right.
So because you could design something beautiful, but if it's not for them, then there's no, you know.
Fair enough.
There's no point.
It's kind of I guess offering Star Wars to a Star Trek fan.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And in terms of, I guess, familiarity, you mentioned color, you mentioned some specific items. How do you think we can go about utilizing these elements in terms of, like, where do we display them? How do we put them around the room?
I think it's good to, well, first, you know, especially with dementia, high contrast colors work well, especially to designate specific areas. So maybe you could use it as maybe a bedspread, you know, or a rug that has their chair that they like to read in with their, you know, their books on over there, or just a feature wall, you know, with that, but or a rug that leads them to specific spaces in that room.
All right. Okay. I think these are all very cool ideas. I want to circle back a bit. You mentioned something of the spaces being barrier-free. Why do you think that's important?
Well, I think just as you age in place, especially dementia, or, you know, specifically dementia, but it could be really anything, wheelchair user, cane user, you don't want them to have things to trip over, you know, you want. So even curved walls is something that, you know, can help with that. But I think just leaving as much circulation as you can on the floor, and you know, in regards to floor space, is number one for their safety.
Okay, and so that's definitely a big point. And you mentioned that as we age, sometimes we get extra equipment to help us move around, so a cane or a wheelchair and all of that. And as a designer, how do you kind of plan for these possibilities?
I mean, it could be anywhere from wider doorways, wider hallways. I think in a perfect practice of that, 5-foot hallways would be ideal. But
that's lovely.
Yeah, right. We understand how hard that is in design.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Let's see, anywhere from low pill carpets, if any, definitely non-slip backings underneath them.
Okay.
The last thing we need them is to flip up. Stuff like that. Again, curved furniture, curved walls. Yeah.
So nothing spiky, I suppose.
Yeah, nothing spiky.
Nothing spiky. That's, I guess, the other thing. So we mentioned them not tripping, them having visual cues and all. In terms of wayfinding, when it comes to the elderly population or a population who's dealing with dementia, how do you think that would be slightly different from the regular home, I guess?
I think that most importantly, to use the ground. You probably want to use different material. So, carpet walkway or maybe a marble or a stone walkway or whatnot, and then carpet to kind of show that they're different.
Okay, yeah. So different zones and all of that. Okay. And I think my next question is, oftentimes falls and all of that are a huge issue to someone who's dealing with dementia or someone who's dealing with old age. I mean, we can't have fluffy floors to kind of mitigate the fall, but what's the next best thing, I suppose?
Let's see. I mean, probably. I mean, cork materials kind of it's a little newer these days, but it just has kind of that self-healing aspect to it.
Okay.
So maybe something like that. Again, maybe a low pile carpet, but again, you don't really want that much friction.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. All right. Well, this is what we know so far, but here's a fun little thought exercise, I suppose. How do you see such spaces be 50 or 100 years into the future with the whole advancement of technology? We're already hooked to our phones, really.
Yeah.
But with things like AI or visual screen, digital screens becoming ever more present in our day-to-day life, how do you see a retirement home 50 years into the future or 100 years into the future?
In a perfect world, I would hope that it would be very geared to the individual needs of the person. In a perfect world, that's what we would want. Obviously, intuitive, I guess, aspects. And yeah, again, no clutter. I don't know. I just want everything to be individualistic to each person. And I think when you go into, a senior living home, they're all kind of the same. It's kind of cookie cutter, and and I think that's just hard for someone that's trying to age in place or age there to want to be productive and to
Fair enough.
So I think it's just
So I think the main takeaway is to have customizable spaces, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so the hopefully when I get there, you might not need it for a while still, but when I get there, I'll be able to customize it slightly.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Crystal. It's been fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks. So in our next segment, we'll be joined by Dr. Naomi Coleman Medina, Assistant Professor of Instruction in the Department of Psychology at Texas State University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our next guest is Dr. Naomi Coleman Medina, an assistant professor of instruction in the Department of Psychology at Texas State University, who brings her expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, as we age, part of the natural process is that we have trouble remembering things. So, how do you think that kind of affects our outlook on well, I won't say life, that's a whole discussion, but our outlook on how we kind of view our home or view our workplace.
As we age?
Yeah.
And how that affects our outlook on our home or our workplace?
Yeah,
okay.
Because not to go into like dementia right away where we start forgetting where certain rooms are, but an average person as they start having trouble remembering things.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think of when I administer exams, and this is going to get there, believe me.
Oh, yeah, no, go for it.
When I administer exams, I never ask my students to move seats. And it's because I believe that throughout the semester, and many of them do sit in the same places. In fact, I'll know a student, I remember where you sat.
Yeah.
They pick a certain place for a reason.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I don't know what that is. It doesn't matter. But that's where they sit. If that's where they choose to sit for the semester, my asking them to, because that's where they took in information.
All right,
and where, from what we know in cognitive retention, are retaining facts, if we're studying for exams, the best place to be tested is where we learned it.
Oh, okay.
And so in a classroom where we learn something, I would never want my student to interrupt their seating pattern. That's where they learned it.
Okay.
They're going to be better able to bring it back, retrieve it. They encoded it there. In that seat, they stored it. If we're looking at memory processing, they stored it there, and now they need to retrieve it, and they need to sit in the same spot if they can. That's going to here, as we keeping some continuity in our lives. And I'm not saying don't change anything. Be the same. If you want to change if a person wants to change the furniture or change, that's healthy for them. But in a big picture. Aging processes, we don't want to be moving things. I have elderly parents, very elderly.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And the last thing that I would do would be to turn around their life. And
it's interesting you bring it up because when it comes to mental health, a big life event can be a triggering factor for a mental health condition or crisis. And some of these factors is, what you'd say a divorce, a death, or is moving homes.
Absolutely.
So changing your environment.
Changing the environment.
Yeah, wow.
And, too, there's when we think of our ability to flourish as a human, yes, there's nature, but there's also our social interactions and that part of our life. And in fact, speaking of elderly people, and I'm sorry if I'm skipping ahead or this is off track, but it crossed my mind, so I want to share it. With elderly people, inviting them and having a space for them to actually go outside is opening opportunity for social engagement.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of the way it is too. It's argued with children. If they're invited to be outside, they're going to play, they're going to be innovative. And they're going to engage possibly with other kids.
That's true, yeah.
But going back to as we're aging and going to even what can hopefully help us stay more alert or fight off dementia. It brings me back to an experience I had with a client who was a young man and young teenager, and we would go outside. I did a lot of. I work in my therapy practice. I do work in the outdoors to the extent that I can, if it's good for my clients. So anyway, we were outside, and he spent an entire 45 minutes because I thought this is impossible. He wanted to find frogs. I said, you can't just find frogs. It's grass. There's not a river. Do you know how many frogs he found? Like five or six of them. And it was his way of searching. And as he's searching, he's thinking.
Oh, gotcha.
The outdoors gives all sorts of stimuli.
Yeah. All right.
Clouds that have different formations. Textures of grass. What we might hear. I love an activity where to close my eyes and just listen to what I'm hearing, not what I'm seeing. Just focus on what I'm hearing outside. Yeah,
because we're I think as a species we're overly reliant on our sense of sight.
We
right?
are.
Yeah,
we are.
And when it comes to if you ever see a design student or a designer out there on a trip, you'll kind of spot them right away because they're the ones who are walking up to buildings and doing this, kind of touching everything, trying to get the idea of how this feels and all of that.
Right.
But the sense of hearing, I think that's a major thing.
It is, and smell even.
That's true.
And the metaphor we can find in when we are outside, and this is for older, any age.
Yeah.
We did this with a high school. With our college group of participants, and we invited them to find metaphor. In other words, with what you see, what could that represent in your life?
Right. Yeah.
And this is an activity that can be done with elderly people as well.
All right.
Look outside. What do you see that reminds you of something that happened in your life? And where were you at that time?
Yeah. That's fascinating. I guess my kind of next question is how, when someone's dealing with dementia, how would their kind of thought process differ than, say, a person who is elderly and just dealing with memory issues? Because it is different, right?
Yes. So dementia. There's dementia, which is a diagnosis, and then there's memory issues, which all of us have.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
I guess to speak to for being a forgetful type of person, and how our environment can, I guess you might say, offset our tendency to forget.
Yeah.
Again, order in our lives. And having the opportunity to, I'll go back to our conversation on taking a break. Sometimes I think we really literally forget, and I can't say there's any science behind this, it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
We do have a whole lot packed up in here on a daily basis.
Fair enough, yeah, that's true.
And I know while we're likely to be able to hold more information than we realize, we still can feel mentally fatigued and full, my brain's fixing to blow up.
Yeah.
And so taking a break from that can literally help our memory.
That's I think that's a great point, and I think when taking a break is quintessential. I wish I knew how important it was in my younger years, because I appreciate it way more now.
That.
Yeah.
I realize that.
Yeah. But I loved also the idea when you touched on order and having like an established routine that helps a person who's dealing with with memory challenges.
And there's something too about the term order that's very subjective.
Yeah, fair enough. That's true.
What I consider orderly, somebody else might consider chaotic.
That's true. We've all had that friend who had
right.
Their office would look like something out of, a tornado.
Right, like I could.
But, yeah.
I've got some colleagues at their office when it's like full of all this stuff. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's really a lot of overload for me.
Yeah.
But not for them.
That's true. And if you move something just by 1 inch, they'll know.
Right. And so when it comes to elderly people or older people or anybody for that matter, what are they comfortable with? Is this something that they desire? Does this give them grounding?
Gotcha.
Because we can't jump in and make an assumption, well, that looks cluttered, get rid of it.
Yeah.
That could be very well where that person feels safe. I mean, that
might
or
be super upsetting for them, right?
Absolutely. So being really aware of what we move around or what we encourage, especially if they're elderly or older people.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I think all of these kind of things kind of boils down to a point that you need to kind of tailor the solutions to the person.
To the person.
There's not one size fits all, right?
No, and I had to, that was a good lesson I learned when I became a licensed professional counselor was that, my goals that I might see in a person isn't necessarily their goals.
All right.
Okay, so what they find their happy place may not be mine.
That's true. That's so true. In a quick, like maybe a 20-second thing,
I'll try.
What would be the quintessential, like practical change for in someone's environment that you think, okay, if you can do only one thing, what would that thing be?
I would ask this person, do you take vitamins? Okay.
All right.
Okay, they're going to think immediately, yes, I take vitamin A or B, D, C, whatever. You need vitamin G.
Oh.
Green.
Green. Gotcha.
Or others have called it vitamin N. It's any type of the natural world, any aspect of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be visual. It can be any of the senses that you would sense.
Right.
Bring it into your life. It will make the biggest difference.
Fantastic. So you heard it here first. You need a dose of green in your life. So thank you so much.
You're
Naomi.
welcome. Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Oh, thank you. So in our next segment, we'll be joined by Denise McAllister, Assistant Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our next guest is Denise McAllister, Assistant Professor in the Department of Interior Design at Texas State University, who brings her expertise to this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So whenever we're talking about dementia, it always comes up like the general, I guess, stereotype is someone who's forgetful or who's dealing with memory loss. How do you think memory loss affects how we kind of interact with our environment?
I think the research has shown, and I have learned, as dementia progresses, it's like your age regresses. Like you're not designing for a adult, you're designing for a child, perhaps. So you have to support their needs as if they were younger than they really are.
All right.
And as you know, like in a dementia care facility, they don't necessarily recognize themselves as the age they're at. They recognize themselves and their family years ago. They're living kind of in the past or living with the mental capacity of. So we have to design with respect to that.
Yeah.
The environments have to be safer, just like you were, there has to be like contrast, like a regular old, 30-year-old male, can safely navigate through almost any space.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're dealing with a vulnerable population, you have to protect them, so to speak.
That is true. And I guess it's a double whammy because it's like the vast majority of people living with dementia are usually in the age bracket of 60 or 65 and older. So not only you're dealing with this mental challenge, I suppose, but you're also dealing with the physical challenge of our bodies just kind of deciding, well, I'm getting there, I want to take it easy,
Right, yeah. A safe, comfortable place to sit, like
that is true.
Arms on the chairs because your legs aren't quite as strong. But then you're still reacting to the space. as if you were 6 or younger, and like show me where to sit kind of thing. But your body has to accommodate. You have to have, like I said, arms on chairs so you can easily push up out of a seat.
Yeah. And I think you bring in a good point with within design, for instance. As a designer, we know that an armrest is more than just a place to rest your arms when we're working and such. It's also a kind of a vantage point where you could just use it for leverage to getting up or sitting down. So how do you think we as designers can contribute to kind of the comfort and safety of a space?
With proper specifications,
yeah.
Arms on chairs, arms on the dining chairs, appropriate lighting in a dining environment. I actually have done a lot of work in this area, right? Firm seating, not too floppy, not too cushy, but still comfortable and enveloping.
I found myself the other day. I sat on a beanbag chair.
Oh no!
For one of the kids, and like really comfortable, nice to sit on, but getting up was a struggle.
Yeah.
More or less, I had to roll over it.
Right. Yeah, and imagine if you put a person that didn't quite understand where they were at and why they can't get up. So. But if we're doing like a sensory space, then you want, for a child, then you want that beanbag enveloping, safe situation. Yeah, it's definitely a complex, much more complex career field.
That is so
profession than picking out colors.
that is so true. But I think you bring in a really cool idea, is that the sense of familiarity, and that's a key aspect for someone living with dementia. Is oftentimes they cannot identify what's going on. Like they cannot be familiar with their environment because of that mental challenge. And so how do we kind of give them like the cues or help them be more familiar with the space and eventually more comfortable?
I guess with integrating it, introducing it gently. Like I'm reminded of smart home technology I mentioned, and the Google Home, hey Alexa, turn on the light, which I think is so empowering for a person with physical or cognitive challenges to be able to do that. But the first time they hear Hey Google or Alexa or all those, I don't know who they all are, say something, they're like, who's here? Like there's somebody in my kitchen, and they have to, you have to slowly transition them into, look, Grandma, this is Alexa, or, she's here to help you. It's very scary. And if you slowly transition into it, it doesn't surprise you, but it's very scary to someone who's not cognitively aware of where that voice is coming from, or like the radio and the television, they're very familiar with that, but it doesn't talk to you directly, and it doesn't respond to what you said. Well, now we've got the smart home technology that will empower them so much. Lock the door. Is the stove turned off? But they don't get it yet, or
and
maybe ever. I don't know.
And I think we're kind of there's this case where the first ever movie that was shown in a theater, it showed a train kind of heading towards the screen, and people started jumping out of their seats.
Right.
So in a sense, we're getting the same experience with the new technology.
We are, that's a good point. So practical small changes.
Easing ourselves into it, I suppose. I wonder, I think I love the practical changes of like going bit by bit and like introducing the interventions little by little. But the other thing that kind of fascinates me now, that nowadays we get interactive movies or interactive storytelling, and you have to kind of click and let the person, make the choice of the character we see on TV, right? Kind of like there was a story series where.
Are you a gamer?
A little bit, yeah. but like there was a series of storybooks, I think Goosebumps or something, where you'd come to a fork in the road and you either go left or right. If you're going left, jump to page 55, or you're going left.
Oh, okay.
But it fascinates me to think, well, what would happen down the line, like 20 years from now, 50 years from now? How do you think the a dementia-assisted living home would look like? I guess just.
We've kind of talked about like chaotic, like loud, scary, like a chaotic environment is very counterproductive, very bad, But it's kind of what you're used to too. Like like I remember when AutoCAD came out, I was a hand draftsman and having to learn AutoCAD and now Revit, and but now I would never go back to the board because it's so much more efficient. So I think as this technology is integrated into our society, as people age, they'll be used to it more so.
I guess so. Yeah. Oh wow.
So and another thing I thought of, like introducing this and small changes, try and look at it from your user's point of view, and if they let their grandkids teach them.
That's true.
If they see their daughter is always in their business, always bossing them around, then let the grandchildren introduce.
Right. Oh, that's a cool idea.
And another thing, if you're if you're a stakeholder, if you're concerned about your family's dementia, I would encourage you to take advantage of a dementia simulation house.
Oh yeah.
Like actually, what's it called? Immerse yourself simulation.
Like a virtual.
We work with virtual reality a lot too. So if you can experience what they're experiencing, and that's where people that are medical professionals who understand dementia, and they run these sim houses where they can allow family members to imagine what it's like.
That's so true. I guess you bring in a really cool point, because in some places there's something called the aging suit. So
I was just thinking of that. I didn't know you knew about those. Yeah.
So you wear a whole suit, a whole getup that kind of
makes it hard.
Makes it
weakens your legs. It makes it hard to bend your legs. It makes it hard to grip your hands. Like all the things that we suffer with as we decline physically, it simulates them. And so then I use a very simple technique with my students, put them in a wheelchair and make them go across campus.
There you go.
And figure out, and then they know, and make them walk with a cane or a walker.
Yeah.
I mean, encourage them,
well,
make an assignment, and we do make them.
That's true.
But then they can actually imagine, okay, I have to get through this door. Instead of looking at the ADA, okay, I need 17 inches here, I need, approach side, do it.
That is so true.
So I think that would apply to any environment.
But I think that you bring in a good point, where we really have to kind of put ourselves as designers in the shoes of the person we're aiming to design for, because it's not just about making it look cool. It's really about getting it to function for the person. Right. Yeah. Oh wow. Well, I think lots of fascinating things, and I really want to thank you for taking the time for being with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah. Well, design has the power to make us comfortable, bring us clarity, and hopefully dignity, especially for those living with dementia. When we create environments that feel safe and familiar, we support memory and connection at every stage of life. I want to thank you for watching Mindscapes. Until we meet again, please be kind to spaces and the people that you care for. Thank you.